Hello and good day to you all. Let's continue the Command & Conquer theme and talk about Red Alert 2. Like Tiberian Sun, many of you called me out for not even mentioning it on the main RTS timeline videos. Again, it is totally understandable. Command & Conquer has imprinted its name for the RTS throughout all eras, Classic, Golden Age, and Modern. Red Alert 2. Don't go thinking you'll experience the same gameplay as Tiberian Sun like me. To my surprise, they are two completely different games despite using the same game engine. Released in 2000, Red Alert 2 continues a story from the first of the spin-off series. It takes place in an alternate universe where Adolf Hitler and his Nazi empire cease to exist, which ignites the Soviet Empire to rise up as a new threat to the Allies. The interesting part about Red Alert's story is that there is a theory which events of the first Red Alert can have two timelines in the Command & Conquer universe. If the Allies were to defeat the Soviets, the timeline continues in Red Alert 2, and if the Soviets are to overcome the Allies, then the events shift into Tiberian Dawn. I'm always a big fan of multiple timelines in a large universe, especially in a well laid out story such as Command & Conquer. I now enjoy the live acting cutscenes, but if you would have asked me that when I initially played the first Command & Conquer game, I would have told you CGI looked much cooler.
General.
Bit of a change or revert in the cutscenes from Tib's Sun was that it went back to having you as the commander being addressed in first person.
But you'll get along better with the Soviets.
Which makes sense given that Westwood attempted to make this RTS feel as if you are actually present in the game and controlling a system through your own personal computer.
You were hacking into or becoming a remote commander of a battlefield.
The acting for the cutscenes still had its exaggerated moments that made it satirical and fun.
Get Tanya out of the hole she dug for herself and make her useful, would you?
And it did have some serious ones with some outstanding character portrayal.
So I may thank you in person.
Other new gameplay features introduced include unit rallying. I'm glad they added this because it was overdue for the Command & Conquer games when comparing other RTS around this time. Unit queuing has also increased from up to 5 for each vehicle and infantry class to unlimited, which is satisfying knowing that you can divert your focus elsewhere a little more frequently. Great for when launching attacks and needing to replenish perished units as quickly as possible. You don't have to worry about over-recruiting and being supply blocked, as there is no population limit, which has remained from Tiberian Sun. A new added RTS feature to the CNC universe is the unit garrisoning in neutral buildings. Now, we did see this in StarCraft and Age of Empires 2 with the bunkers, guard towers, and castles, but those were all structures you built. In RA2, there are buildings found throughout the map where your GIs or conscripts can garrison for cover and attack. It's a great tactic to use this feature in campaigns with fixed units, as it will help keep them alive. Other neutral buildings include tech buildings that your engineer can capture to provide aid such as a stream of funds, a repair facility for vehicles, hospital to heal units, and a power plant that can provide extra power. Unit Veterancy was introduced in the CNC multiverse in Tiberian Sun, but further improved in RA2 as it is much easier to gain, and you are now notified. If your units eliminate a certain number of enemies, they can improve their stats in the first level of Veterancy called Veteran, and in the next level, called Elite. On top of further raising their stats, they are able to regenerate health and obtain an improved version of their weapon. Unit Veterancy is a great incentive for the player to try their best to keep as many units alive, and forces the player to execute more micromanagement strategies. Gameplay overall feels faster in RA2, faster unit movement and reaction relative to the map sizes. There were times in Tib's Sun I had to wait minutes before the units reached the commanded waypoint, which can test your patience. The graphics had some noticeable changes to the detail of the sprites, made it even easier to pick apart the units from others. The backgrounds of the maps really made it feel like your troops were invading a country with all the buildings, people, and beaches. A great touch of a realistic nature. Overall tone is not quite as dark as Tib's Sun, but it does have its moments on display. During the Tesla troops' shock attack, the victim is turned into a skeleton corpse, or the Desolators frying the living heck out of them. One aspect that must be emphasized is the unique units and the roles they play in your army. The harvesters are even unique between the two factions, where the Soviet one is armed with a weapon, and the Allies have a harvester that teleports back to the base for faster collection. Every one of these units have a certain counter and a weakness towards other types of units. There isn't a versatile unit that can attack both the air and ground units, doing the same amount of damage, that oftentimes the players would recruit most. In StarCraft, the versatile unit would be the Hydralisk and Marines, that you can't go wrong with recruiting to impact the battle in any circumstance given their low cost. So what benefit does lacking an all-around units have in RA2? It allows you to exploit each unit's advantage, and rather than using specific unit attack builds that are favored, you are forced to recruit and use every single unit for their specific role. I am satisfied that they decided to expand the air and naval units this time around. It was such a disappointment in Tib's Sun where this was barely expanded on, if at all. The idea of changing your attack schemes for the map terrain that has large bodies of water, mountains, or both to use more aerial and sea units is well worth the challenge. If you are tired and are having no success of using your troops and vehicles to attack the enemy, another way of helping you dismantle the enemy in a much simpler form would be to use the faction unique special weapons. They each have an offensive ability and a defensive or passive one. The nuke launch for the Soviets can obliterate structures and units in a certain targeted area anywhere around the map. Their passive special power is the Iron Curtain, which renders units in a surrounding area invincible for a duration. The Allied units have a weather control device that can send a series of lightning strikes that damage an area differing from the single explosion of the nuclear weapon, and it can end up doing more damage if planted in the right spot. But it does lack an after effect that the nuclear explosion has from radiation, which slowly kills troops over time. Their passive superpower is the Chronosphere, which allows you to teleport a group of units anywhere on the visible map. Best used for surprise attacks and attacking from an unguarded front. The music genre of RA2 remained heavy metal guitar with fast-paced beats. It went well with the idea of the Western world being invaded by the Reds. The Hell March 2 did not sound quite as good as the original, but it was still solid. Now, so far we talked about some of the new implemented RTS features for the C&C series, but we have to bring up a few of its shortcomings I felt during gameplay. First one that irked me and also surprised me for being absent was that there was no mechanic where you can double click a unit to have all the same type of units selected. At this point in the RTS timeline, it is a pretty common feat, and Red Alert 2 would have benefited from it a lot, as I felt the units crowd closely next to each other, making it hard to drag the mouse to select certain units. You could create control groups to separate units, but I don't think it would be as efficient and practical as same unit selection. The other bone I have to pick with this RTS is the enemy AI, especially during certain missions. I don't find it fair at times when they are constantly able to recruit while attacking, making it impossible for you to set up an attack of your own. As a human player, it is hard to constantly perform both tasks without compromising one or the other. The fact that one of the missions I had an extremely hard time expanding the base as it was set up in close proximity to the enemies just shows you how difficult it is. And the initial invasion from the enemy happened within the first minute of playing the campaign, making it extremely difficult to keep up. This was on normal difficulty, by the way. The campaign missions consisted of 12 each for the Soviets and Allies. Both campaigns tell the story in their own perspective and provide a different outcome for the ending. I would have preferred a chronological timeline of the campaigns like what they did in Firestorm, where the campaign must be played in a certain order to continue the story. Truthfully and surprisingly, these were the only flaws I noticed playing the game. Red Alert 2 had shipped 1 million units for the first week of launch, being quite successful financially, but what it stands out the most for is its critical success, ranging from the high 8s to the mid 9s out of 10. Renowned for being a well-built, bug-free RTS that includes most RTS features found during an era where the RTS was booming with successful titles. The multiplayer also offered LAN and an online play through EA servers of opponents across the globe. From my perspective, was Red Alert 2 a well-made RTS? I have to say that it definitely knocks the ball out of the park for its sheer ability of having smooth gameplay and a plethora of unique units that can support you in the battle. The elusive giant squids that are mind-controlled by the Soviet commander Yuri to instantly destroy the Allied ships, and the specially trained echo-launching dolphins that can only be spotted with certain vessels are all intriguing units introduced in the second installment of Red Alert. The different types of missions, such as mind-controlling the president who is guarded by special units called the Navy SEALs, and the prism towers that evaporate units in an instant, created a new challenge to try to tactically outsmart the defending units by luring and flanking them. What amazed me the most about RA2 is the fact that it took all the great aspects that came out of TIB's Sun, accurate pathfinding, unit specialization, and super weapons, and added even more improvements, rally points, unlimited queuing, garrisoning, and naval and airship expansions. There wasn't anything in TIB's Sun that we did not see in RA2. I did prefer Tiberian Sun's story over Red Alert 2, but it had to do more with the setting of a sci-fi post-apocalyptic world that caught my attention more than the overused World War theme in RTS. But Yuri's story's arc also had me glued to my seat with full attention on what he was going to do next.
I tell you this because you are too smart not to be curious.
After completing the game in its entirety within a week, I really must infer that Red Alert 2 is a phenomenal RTS, and the folks at Westwood did a fantastic job for their last Command & Conquer game made before EA unjustly decided to pull the plug on their division. Which I don't understand why, as both RA2 and TIB's Sun were actually very successful critically and most importantly, financially. But sadly, you know how it is with bigger companies. One successful division pays the price for the company's overall financial struggles. I do want to say there are many amazing RTS games out there that I have yet to fully play. And Red Alert 2 is an example of one that I can't believe I did not fully enjoy during its initial release. My advice to any of you who haven't played a certain RTS for whatever strong resentments you have toward it, at least give it a chance with a thorough playthrough. Don't make the same mistake that I did with Red Alert 2, because in my opinion now, it is at least a top 10 RTS all time that I have played so far. There you have it, a breakdown of what Red Alert 2 has achieved for the RTS genre and why so many of you swear by it. Any thoughts? Is Red Alert 2 enshrined as one of the best RTS to play? Tell me what you enjoy most from Red Alert 2. Do you think it doesn't get nearly as much respect as other successful RTS? Next video will touch on Dark Reign that has some cool RTS features I want to show you, and it has flown to success under the radar. Please do me a giant favor, if you watch the video this far, like, comment, and subscribe as usual. And if you want to take it a step further, share the video with some friends. It would really be appreciated. Thanks for having my back. Later.